CWM can reveal this morning there's a postcode lottery across Birmingham and the Black Country when it comes to parents asking for help for children with special needs. Mums and dads of children suffering with a range of conditions. We may be talking about autism, dyslexia, ADHD, a whole range of problems, can ask for an assessment to see if their offspring qualifies for extra support through an education and health care plan. Now, there were nearly 2,000 requests for one of these assessments across the West Midlands during 2013-2014. In Dudley and Walsall, the vast majority of requests for an assessment made by parents were refused. And even when schools and social workers asked for assessments, nearly a third of those was rejected in Dudley and Walsall as well. But in Wolverhampton, every parent who suspected their child needed an assessment was given one. Now, John Harris is a parent who has experience of this. He actually has an assessment today, I think, for one of your kids. Is that right, John?
It's his annual review this morning.
Yeah, he's also the head teacher of a school for children with special needs in Handsworth. So, tell me about the differences, John, between local authorities who seem very willing to offer assessments to parents and those, on the face of it, who appear unwilling.
Well, I work in Birmingham, and I think part of the issue in Birmingham is capacity, because every request that comes in for an assessment, is going to require lots of paperwork, lots of multi-agency input, and I think sometimes the capacity just isn't there in authorities. And also I think there's been a lack of willingness to really get involved early on, especially and do early assessments, when actually what we know is that early assessment, which can lead to early intervention, is absolutely crucial to make a difference to people's lives.
It just seems so variable, given that, we've got a national standard for what a child with special educational needs might be. In Birmingham, 47% of parental requests for an assessment were refused. In Sandwell, 58%. But in Birmingham, if you got the social workers or the teachers on side, only 19% of the requests for an assessment was refused. In Sandwell, still 32%. So, if you get the social workers and the teachers on board, which obviously can help you, it doesn't guarantee still that you're going to get the assessment.
Yeah, I've got experience of both of those authorities as well, working in Birmingham and living in Sandwell. And I think what is important is that, it doesn't have to wait for the schools to get involved. It obviously makes a difference, because then, unfortunately, it seems that maybe there's some credibility to the request for an assessment when the experts, as they're called, get involved. But the whole point of this new system is actually to empower parents. And as I said earlier, I think you cannot underestimate how important it is to get assessments done early. And obviously, if you're going for an assessment and your child's not already in school and isn't as well known to services, then clearly your chances of getting the support you need aren't going to happen early. Therefore, what often happens, certainly in the case of autism, which I'm more familiar with, is you end up with kids ending up in the wrong types of placements. Therefore, things go wrong. Therefore, they have to get moved, and the kids haven't had the best start. Whereas if you can get people into places early on and put the right support and structures in place, then you can make a huge difference.
And this assessment, potentially anyway, triggers additional help over and above what a mainstream school can provide. You've mentioned your children with autism. I've mentioned dyslexia, ADHD. What kind of conditions might qualify for this extra help?
Well, across Birmingham, for example, there's 20 plus special schools which all cater for people with different needs, from visual impairments, physical needs. So there's a full range, even within our city, of need, as you say, ranging from things that are very visible and very obvious in terms of disability, to some disabilities that aren't very visible and obvious, such as autism. And that's often the problem, that people find it harder to spot there. So you do find, I think, certain conditions, people are less willing to put the assessments and the support in place because they can't quite see it. Whereas I think when we're looking at things like physical disability, it's more apparent, and then the assessment is a more straightforward process.
If you get an assessment, what difference can it make to your life or your child's life?
Absolutely huge, because it's the first step towards getting the right sort of intervention and support, and the very basic is the right school. And we deal with lots of kids who come to us because it hasn't worked in the schools that they're in, because they probably haven't had the assessments early on. So therefore you're spending a lot of time putting things in place and unpicking behaviour and trying to help parents. So obviously it's very emotional, having been there myself. Whereas if you can, like we were able to last year, take extra students early because they'd had the assessment, you can really put the support in. And hopefully improve their well-being and the well-being of the families, because as I heard on your show yesterday, lots of stories of families, where there was family breakdown, people had to give up their jobs, because this is a very costly in terms of finance and also an emotional issue.
Yeah, we were talking about this over on 5 Live Investigates, where we looked at this from a national point of view yesterday. Looking at it locally, we've got this new system, and it's been introduced by the government, which says that instead of the old statementing process, we now have this assessment process, after which you may qualify for this care plan. The evidence suggests, though, that in reality, in terms of parents accessing the extra help they want for their child with special educational needs, it hasn't really made much difference. Is that your experience?
So what we're seeing with the Education, Health and Care Plan is a really wonderful aspiration that actually we look further ahead. The annual review, as it suggests, was a review once a year, and for parents, it's small steps, it keeps things manageable. The idea of the new EHCs is that you do take the longer term view, and you do actually start to coordinate services, so you're coordinating schools with health and social care. The evidence so far is that schools, a lot of the burden is falling on schools, and schools are very willing to do this work, but actually getting health and social care around the table is proving challenging, and we're at the moment working on our Year 5 EHCs, which is a massive year in terms of transition to secondary school, and what we're finding is that schools are putting a huge amount in, but actually it's not making that much difference in terms of provision, because at the same time as these grand plans, which we all applaud, we're seeing huge cuts to services and uncertainty as well. So it's okay saying to parents, you need this service, you need this provision, but actually we're finding that the finance isn't often there to provide that. So that's a big issue for us all at the moment in schools.
John, good to speak to you. Thank